Welcome to Katha Upanishad study and discussion. We are in chapter 2, section 2. We will go through verses 6 to 8. In these verses, Lord Yama explains the law of karma and thus gives direct answer to Nachiketa's question, what happens to life after death? In the next slide, we want to disclose the references and the illustration used in these presentations or for learning purpose only. In the next slide, the choices of question for discussion. 1. What is your understanding of karma? How much of this life is determined by karma and what can be changed with free will? Explained in verses 6 to 8. 2. What happens to the body, mind after death? What happens to Atman? 3. For someone who has realized Atman, how does their life change and what happens after death? Then, what happens to the ignorant, the person unaware of Atman in this life and after death? Explained in verses 6 to 8. So, now, in this section, Lord Yama explains how to realize Brahman in the human body, microcosm, and then in the larger universe of creation, the macrocosm. Now, the summary from last week, verses 1 to 5. Lord Yama, using a metaphor, describes the body as a city with 11 gates. The master, the Brahman, lives in the heart, Hridayam, of the city as Atman and gives life to the city. This is the Brahman manifesting in all the living beings and also in all worldly things. This all-pervading Brahman also manifests as prana in all living beings. So, what happens when the embodied Atman that dwells within the body while alive is released from the body? That is Nachiketa's question. Here, Lord Yama explains the law of karma. So far, the verses in the Upanishad establishes that when Atma is present, the body is alive. And when Atma is absent, the body is dead. And therefore, Atma is the cause of life in a body. So, this realization, surrendering to this knowledge, gives freedom from fear, the fear of all, the fear of death, and freedom from attachment to desire and bondage. Thus, the realized one is free from the suffering, the dukkha in life, and free from karma in this life, the agami karma, and enjoys the peace in the liberated life as a jivan mukti. After death, liberated from all the karmas, including the parabdha karma, never to be born again, the person is a videha mukti. So the Bhagavad Gita says that all karmas are consumed in the fire of wisdom for the videha mukti. In other words, all the three bodies, the physical, subtle, causal, which is made up of Panchaputas, dissolve into the corresponding total, like an iceberg dissolving into the ocean, as explained in Mundaka Upanishad. So now, what happens to the bound soul, bound with karma, ignorant about the Atman? Lord Yama explains these in verses 6 to 8. So, now, little prelude to the next few verses. We went through in detail in Yoga Sutra about the karma. So, we will recap here. So, what is karma? It is cause and effect. It is not that simple. Maharishi Patanjali says that our past thoughts, feelings, and actions in this life and also our past lives leave karmic impressions called samskaras. These impressions in our subconscious memory manifest as tendencies, vasanas, that shape our mental habits and our character. So, the concept of karma is associated with the idea of rebirth. So, to believe in karma, we have to believe in rebirth and vice versa. Karma in the present affects one's current life as well as the nature and quality of future lives. So we all heard, what you sow, so you reap. But it is not that simple. For example, though we plant a tomato seed, a tomato plant emerges if all other conditions are right, like many variables like water, air, fertilizer, earth, sunlight are needed for its growth. So karma is not that straightforward, and it is vast and complicated topic. So the karma concept thus encourages each person to seek and live a moral life as well as avoid an immoral life. So I'll repeat again. So the karma concept encourages each person to seek and live a moral life and avoid immoral life. So the picture on the right, the karma symbol with the endless knot. The endless knots symbolize interlinking of cause and effect, a karmic cycle that continues eternally. So in the next slide, the sastras, the scriptures describe 3 types of karmas. So what are the 3 types of karma? The picture on the right, one, sanchita karma, that is on the top, and then on the bottom picture also you can see the sanchita karma are the past lives and the past in this life works and actions, the baggage that we have accumulated, the karmic debts. These cannot be changed but can only wait to come into fruition. This is the vast accumulation of karma that encompasses our countless past lifetimes. So the karmic baggage, the karmic debts. 2, parapta karma is that portion of the past karma that we have brought in this life to exhaust, that is responsible for the present. The things that we did in the past make what we are today. It cannot be avoided or changed, but being experienced and exhausted only by doing nishkama karma, the action and deeds without selfishness or attachments or aversions. 3, agami or kriyamana karma is the karma we are creating for ourselves right here in the current moment. It is the action that we create and the choices we make right now as we live this present lifetime. So, what we can do by taking full responsibility for our thoughts and actions, we can create our reality. This can be considered as our free will to change the karma. So now coming back to Nachiketa's question, what happens to the bound soul, bound with karma, ignorant about the Atman? So Lord Yama explains in verses 6 to 8, and Ranjani will add further to this and take us to the verses.
Thank you, Val. So this was a really nice recap of karma that we've covered quite extensively in the Yoga Sutras. And I just wanted to point out one thing in the 2 photographs here. So if you look at this archer, his quiver full of arrows is the Sanchita Karma. That is the sum total of all the impressions gained over however many lifetimes a soul may have lived. The Prarabdha Karma is just that portion of the karma that is activated in this life. And what determines how much is activated depends upon the nature of your birth. Like, what kind of a body are you born in? What are the conditions? So based on that, only a small subset. And also, which is the strongest karma that needs to be dealt with in this life is what you are born with. And the Kriyamana or the Agama karma is, as we live, we accumulate karma, right? We do some things that are good, we do some things that are not so good. We do some things that leave deep emotional impressions. All that is your Kriyamana karma. And so the bag of quivers continues to grow. So let's see how Yama deals with it. So in this verse, he answers the question. He just addresses Nachiketa's question and he says, Hantate idam pravakshyami guhyam brahma sanatanam yatha cha maranam prapya Atma bhavati Gautama. So again, he addresses Nachiketa as Gautama. Hanta. So again, Gautama, to you, Pravakshyami, I will relate. Idam, this Guhyam, the secret, Brahma Sanatanam of the eternal Brahman, Maranam Prapya. So after having attained death or having, it's interesting that death is described here as an attainment. Yatha, how? Atma, the self, Bhavati. So it's very straightforward. He says, O Gautama, now let me explain to you the mystery of Brahman, the eternal one, and what happens to the self after death. So if you remember, the earlier verses talked about, okay, after prana, what is left? When the body perishes, what is left? Now he says, when the Atma, after death, what happens to the Atma? Right? I'll cover two and then we'll come to the commentaries. So this next one says, Yonim anye prapadyante shariratvaya dehinaha sthanum anye anusamyanti yatha karma yatha shrutam. Anye dehinaha. So, different selves after death, shariratvaya, to become embodied. What does being embodied means? It means a soul finds a body to live in, a body to manifest itself. So, shariratvaya, to become embodied, yonim prapadyante, they enter a human womb. Anye, others, anusamyanti, enter into sthanam, stationary things. It could be plants, it could be a rock, it could be anything around you, a tree, each in accordance with the deeds done. Yatha shrutam, and in accordance with their knowledge or their awareness of what? Of the nature of Atman. So two very important conditions are being pointed out here. He says some souls enter a human womb to become embodied. Others enter stationary objects like plants. Okay, that's fact one. What happens to the soul, Atman, after death? We've said that the body disintegrates and goes back into the earth and air, and the prana goes back into air, the body goes back. What happens to the Atma? That Atma, after death, some may enter a human womb to again take a body to manifest themselves. Others could enter stationary objects, fact one. Fact two, what does this depend on? According to their karma, which we just talked about, to say what are the strongest samskaras that need to be dealt with and manifested. Second, their knowledge and awareness of their real identity. So those who go through life without any awareness of their own identity and identify with everything in this world will have one kind of rebirth. Those who are aware will have a different kind of rebirth. So this body that we all have today is a result of the karma of previous lives. And the body that we get in next life will depend upon how we feel, how we think, how we act in this life. Okay? So as we talked about it, where does free will come into play? If so much of your life is pre-coded in your DNA, and not only in your DNA, in your subconscious, there are the samskaras, there are the deep impressions of how you think, how you feel, what you've done, strong attachments. All of those are impressions that remain in your semi-conscious. And that continues. So a lot of things that happen to you, the probability of things happening is quite high because these samsaras, you have come into this life with it. Also, the way you react to it to some extent is preconditioned. Because when these samsaras are strong, they set up what are called vasanas. Vasanas are these tendencies, ways of being, ways of reacting. That deep emotional, that impression in your subconscious, you may not even know why you react the way you do, but that is how you react. Those are the vasanas. Who you're attracted to, what you're attracted to, profession, people, relationships, activities. All these are quite hard-coded in your subconscious, and that's why you find yourself behaving in a particular way. What does it take to break that cycle? Does it mean that everything in our life is predictable? No, it is probable. If you just react instinctively, if you just react on your vasanas, yeah, then it is predictive. But we have a choice, right? We have a choice to react differently and change that trajectory of that karma. So let's look at this perspective on rebirth. What happens when an ignorant person dies? Somebody who knows nothing about the kinds of things we're talking about, someone who doesn't know about the Atma, they're in the here and now. It's very existential. They may be good people, very good people, who believe that if I live a moral life and if I focus and I do my dharma on one end, and there'll be another person who, just kind of dismisses everything and says, what I see is what you see is what you get. What is here, if I can't see it, feel it, it doesn't exist, right? That would be the example of ignorance in this context. We are said to have 3 bodies. So let's say, what happens to that kind of a person? We are said to have 3 bodies: the physical, the sthula sharira or the gross sharira, the astral or the sukshma sharira, and the causal or the karana sharira. And you have the Atma. According to our samskaras, which are these past impressions that I just mentioned, we take birth after leaving the physical body. One body perishes, the Atma with its cache, that quiver of all the impressions gained in this life and lots of previous lives, again enters another body. The physical body, the sthula shariram, dies and it mingles with the panchabhutas, right? We talked about it last time. The subtle and causal bodies, the sukshma and karana shariras, survive the death of the physical body and they continue to exist. So for the person who's still in ignorance, what continues with him? The balance of his inherited karma, right? Sanchita karma, plus whatever karma he's acquiring in this life continues, plus whatever knowledge and awareness that he may have gained in this life. Knowledge and awareness related to Atman. These are the 2 factors we take with us when we die. They determine the type of birth we get. We get what we deserve as per our actions. Whatever we've done in this life, that is what determines your next life. And there's another factor. Your knowledge or your spiritual awareness also continues after life. The whole theory of rebirth is based on this. And as Val explained, if you believe in karma, it is tied to reincarnation or rebirth. So what is it that causes the soul or this Atman with its store of impressions to continue seeking new bodies? The births through which the soul passes indicate the restlessness of the spirit for a search for immortality. But nowhere does the spirit find satisfaction, because love for objects does not touch the bottom unity which we have. Remember, we talked about it. If your senses are constantly outward focused, living in this world, believing that this is reality, that does not start to give any sense or any awareness of that inner Atman, that inner spirit, that is just a reflection of that which connects all of us. Thus, loves and hatreds are far removed from reality. What is the reality? The reality that the Atman is the real you. So births and deaths don't cease. And the soul enters different bodies in order to experience a different set of karmas. So this is what happens to an ignorant person, right? So let's say, for example, you have evolved spiritually in this life. You understand that you are not the body. You understand that what's happening in the world, the way you instinctively react, is not it. There is a way to detach. There is a way to distance yourself from what's happening and understand that no matter what happens, it isn't affecting your soul. It isn't affecting that Atman. If you've got that realization, then the dukkha and sukha of this life don't really touch you. It is human to feel emotion. It is human to react in a certain way, right? But if you understand that at the core, it need not affect the Atman, then you're quickly able to come out of it. It is not that you never feel that emotion. So let's say, you lose your job, you lose a relationship, something unexpected happens that you feel is a setback in your life. And even the word setback assumes that there is a progression forward according to, some worldly metrics. It is normal to feel emotion. It is normal to think, why is this happening? Why me? Very normal. Yet, once you understand and you know that what is playing out today is nothing more than a result of past decisions that you may have taken in this life or in previous lives. So, the different points that face you in this life are the momentum generated by a set of previous actions, previous thoughts, previous impressions, subconscious desires that come to the fore. And yet, when you stop and think about not why is this happening to me, but what is the lesson I am supposed to learn here? What is the detachment that I need to develop? Relationships come and go, jobs come and go. Everything in this life changes, but there is something deep within me that never changes. It allows you to distance yourself, it allows you to interrupt that pain and realize that that pain may be misplaced. You are mourning the loss of something that is bound to decay and die. But what doesn't change in you is the Atman. That realization, as Val said earlier, surrendering to that knowledge, allowing that knowledge to reduce the intensity of your emotion, to change the pattern of your thinking, and to change the action that you will take. That is the exercise of free will that allows you to change your karma. You cannot change the past. The way you react to something today determines tomorrow and determines, in this karmic paradigm, determines your future births as well. Okay? So that's where free will comes in. You're born with a lot of baggage, but free will comes in to help you change it. And then this one, what happens when you get that awareness? What is that awareness that we keep talking about? 2.8 describes that. Yaha eshaha supteshu jagarti kamam kamam purusho nirmimanaha tat eva shukram tat brahma tat eva amritamuchyate tasmin loka shrita sarve tat uatyeti na kaschana etat vaitat. Yaha eshaha, he who jagarti remains awake, sapteshu, when the functions of the body sleep, nirmimanaha, building the foundation, shaping, kamam kamam, kama, desire after desire, purushaha, the purusha, the person, the atma, the being, that eva, that is indeed shukram, it is white, it is pure, tat brahma, that is itself Brahman, tateva uchyate, that is indeed said to be amritam, immortal. Tasmin, on it, sarva lokaha shritaha, all the worlds rest on it. Na kachana, no one, tattvatyeti, can transcend that, ever goes beyond that. So that being, or Purusha, who is awake in our sleep, shaping desire after desire, he alone is the pure. He is Brahman. He is known as the immortal. In him, all the worlds rest, and no one can transcend him. This verily is that. Okay? So Yama brings it back, and he says, he answered the question, what happens to the Atma after death, which encapsulates the theory of karma and rebirth. Now he says, to change the trajectory of your karma, to live a different life than you are destined to live, lies upon this awareness of who is this Purusha within you. And how do you recognize this Purusha? The one who is awake, in our sleep, the one who shapes our desires. He may shape our desires, but he is pure, the immortal one. He is the center of this universe. The entire universe rests on him. Nothing else is beyond him. So, summarizing what happens to the Atman, Lord Yama reminds and reiterates, Brahman is the consciousness that resides in every individual. It doesn't decay or die. It is eternal and ever present. The consciousness is ever awake and illumines everything all the time. The other organs illumine the world when they are awake and do not when they are asleep. So your eyes see when you're awake, not when you're asleep. Therefore, these are temporary illuminators. When the mind is active, the consciousness illumines the active mind. When the mind is asleep, the consciousness illumines the sleeping mind. That's why we're able to say we slept well or not when we wake up. And this is beautifully encapsulated by the symbol of the Om, which describes the different states of consciousness in our waking, sleeping states, in how we see the world and how we transcend it, right? So each curve of the Om, we've talked about this before, so I won't go into a lot of detail. Your unconscious state or in deep sleep, your waking state in your conscious experience, in your dream, Maya, in the illusionary, our perceptions, and then in the highest state of spiritual joy. In all of these states, there is one consciousness at play. Different states. The body goes through different states. It transits through different states of consciousness, but that consciousness remains the same. It is not a sensation. It is not a feeling. It is not a thought. It can best be described as an awareness. So if you understand, your mind may be working on something random when you're asleep, but something in you knows that you are asleep. That is why you're able to remember your dreams when you wake up. That is your consciousness. Okay? So we'll stop there. And what we've tried to address in this, and I would love to hear all your reflections on your understanding of karma. How much of this life is determined by karma and what can be changed with free will? What happens to the body after death? What happens to the Atman? And then finally, for someone who has realized Atman, how does their life change? What happens after death? And the converse, what happens to the ignorant, the one who's unaware of this Atman? What happens to that person in life and after death? They can lead a very good life, right? But what happens? How is their life? So just questions for you to consider as a starting point. And with that, let me stop the recording and I'll turn it over to our discussion.